But I'm not in doubt about Landis. Landis was adamant. And I thought because the vote of the owners indicated, and that was just a year after he died, a year or two, it was 1947, indicated clearly that they wanted to keep it white and segregated completely, you understand?
The pressure that was on, apparently from the owners in particular, how much of that pressure do you think was social and how much was economic, based on the fact like the Yankees rented out Yankee Stadium to the black Yankees and made lots of money from it? Do you think it was mostly economic or social, or a combination of both?
Well, a combination of both, but in the discussions that I remember quite well, when the meeting was held in New York and they discussed the Robinson case, they said that the polo grounds was in Harlan and they'd have a riot and burn the polo grounds down. That was one of the reasons that they cited for not letting the black fellas play. They said they'd have a riot in Harlem. The polo grounds was located in Harlem, and indeed it was. And they said they'd have a riot and burn down the polo grounds. And there are all sorts of some excuses. The Southerners, of course, the ones that were Southerners, they were very opposed to it because they were just opposed to the black fellas, you understand. It was a natural prejudice. And I say, and a great many of them threatened not to play. And I told them, I said, I'm sorry, but this fellow's going to play. And I know you don't approve of it. I didn't ask your approval. In fact, I didn't ask anybody's approval. I didn't have to. And I think people have said it took courage. Whatever courage it took, I had it. I don't make any apology for it. Had to do it over again, I'd do the same thing, you understand. But it just happens from the time baseball was organized in 1865 until 1947, they wouldn't let them play. And it came to my attention, and at a given moment in the history of the American baseball, I was called upon to make the decision one way or the other.
So that happened.
We're managing the affairs of countries and prime ministers and the kings. I've known the kings. I knew King George, and I knew the Duke of Windsor, and a great many people in this lifetime that I have been acquainted with, visited with. Had a spectacular career in sports and politics.
Right. At the time you became commissioner, Landis died in '44, then you replaced him shortly after that.
On the 24th day of April, 1945, at a meeting in Cleveland of the club owners, I was unanimously elected to be baseball commissioner. I had not sought it. I had a firm place in the United States Senate. I'd been once appointed and twice elected, and I had gotten along rather well there. And had 3 years to go on my term. Fact is, however, I was never paid from a public service. I tell Mama and the other folks who asked me I was born too soon, and I can prove that too. I was a state senator for $10 a day. I was lieutenant governor for $15 a day for 4 years, and that's all. I was governor for $6,500 a year, and that's all. I was United States senator for $10,000 a year, that's all. Now they get $72,000 and extras to be a United States senator, and the governor gets 45 or 50. The lieutenant governor, her budget last year was $800,000. And the president commissioner, they gave me the baseball job, and that's the reason I took it after the war was over, because I said I hadn't been paid for my public service. And so they offered me $75,000 a year in the aggregate. The president commissioner gets $250, and the new one's going to get $450. So you know I was born too soon.
That's right.
And they on pension. I'm not on pension. I had a small state pension, but a member of the legislature gets $2,700 a month at retirement now under their law, and after 21 years of public service, I get $555.36, and that's all. I joined the pension plan that I inaugurated while I was there for the benefit of state workers. And I also inaugurated the pension plan for the state police, and I'm responsible for the Major League players' pension plan. I financed that and made it actuarially sound. And I can show you here a sterling silver tray with bats and balls that Allie Reynolds, Freddie Hutchison, Danny Litweiler, and Ralph Kiner gave me after I left baseball. And it's one of my treasures. It's the only thing the baseball players of the major leagues ever gave to anybody. I've got it. Before you leave, if you want me to, I'll show it to you.
I'd like to see that.
It's been one of my treasures, of course, and on it says for services rendered to the baseball players of the major leagues.
Players commissioner.
Yeah, and so that's the only thing that they've ever given anybody in the history of American baseball. They don't give anything to anybody very much, you know, very often.
Interesting. I'd like you for a minute, if you would, to speculate, because like when you became commissioner in '45, shortly after that was when the Robinson thing was coming up. If Branch Rickey had not had Jackie Robinson in the wings, and you had the foresight to approve all this, if Robinson had not been the first, and you were the commissioner, and this wasn't all going on, what do you think may have happened in the turn of events? Like there was a lot of movement among black people and liberal white people to integrate baseball. What do you think may have happened, and how quickly, if Robinson hadn't been the first?
Well, they would have kept up the agitation, of course. That's what you had to call it. They were agitating for what they considered was their rights. You understand? They didn't believe, and as I didn't believe, that a fellow with talent couldn't play the national pastime. I just refused to agree that that was proper, you know, under the circumstances. And it would have come about just when, I have no idea. But it just happened at that moment that Rickey had the only fella that anybody considered qualified to take that job, although there were others. But Landis had talked with them and turned them down. And then, of course, there was a great opposition from the fellows who operated the Negro Leagues. They were opposed to it because they were getting along pretty well. They were having exhibition games with the, well, see, Landis went further than I said. He wouldn't even let them barnstorm after the season was over. And that's a matter of record, too. And, of course, I say it would have come about just when, goodness knows, I do not know. I have no idea.
Right.
But they would have kept up the pressure, and like everything else, you know, eventually, if you continue to assert your rights, why, eventually in the history of our country, things have come about. But just when, I have no idea.
You saw Josh Gibson play and Buck Leonard and players like that never played in the majors. Just how good was baseball in the Negro Leagues?
Real good. In the exhibition games that they played, time after time, the black fellas beat the white boys. The best white teams we had. Satchel Paige could beat almost any of them. And Josh Gibson was one of the best catchers in the history of American baseball. I watched him hit. He could hit the ball a country mile. He hit it like it hit over in the next county. If he'd been playing in the open fields, well, never would have found it. You know, we used to have to run the ball down. You know, I played in those when I was a youngster. And he died, of course. He wanted to play, but the fellows who owned the black leagues and who had those fellows under contract and played, they didn't get much money, but they were good. They had a whole lot of fellows that had great talent, Cool Papa Bell and all the others. I knew a great many of them, Judy Johnson. I know a great many of them, you know, and have known them for a long time. And I don't have any idea, of course, with the fellows who owned those franchises, when they started later to raid those black leagues, and of course they destroyed them, as they would. They virtually destroyed the minors. You know, when I was a commissioner, we had 49 minor leagues, and they telecast and broadcast the major league games into the minor league territory and destroyed them. They don't have but 7 or 8 or 9 today. We had 49 when I was there, and they were doing right well. And that was the training ground for the major leagues. But there were mixed feelings, as there are in every sort of an issue that comes up. And if anybody thinks that at a given moment all the blacks are for what the black loudmouths are for, they're mistaken. They're not. And as the case of Jesse Jackson and Farragut, you know, Mayor Good of Philadelphia and Mayor of Atlanta and Bradley of California, they're not for this fella. And of course, according to Farragut, they ought to kill him, you know. They ought to kill him if they're not for him. They ought to find some way to kill him. he's a menace, of course, and I heard him the other night. He's going to get up a new country in the state of Islam. I don't know when he's going to do it, and he's going to have another state right here, and a constitution and a new country, and in it they're going to range to kill people that don't do to suit them. You understand? How foolish can you get? You understand? But all the black people were not for this integration. You understand? Especially those that owned the colored franchises, the black league franchises.
Because that was their livelihood.
Well, sure,
And take away
sure,
that and
sure. Martin and some of those fellows who owned some of those teams came to talk to me about it. And he said, they're going to break up our leagues. I said, I expect so, because they're going to offer money that you can't afford to pay. And the player's pension is one of the outstanding things that I was able to accomplish. You don't know about that, but Tom Gallery knows about it, and he's still living. He called me the other day from California. I made the contract with him and made the player's pension fund actuarially sound. And you know why I did that? After Alexander and Dazzy Vance retired, they came to Lexington playing with the House of David. And I took them to dinner one night at the country club. I never felt as sad about two fellas in my life. Here they were, national heroes and two of the greatest pitchers of all time, playing for the House of David. They had no money, they had no skills, they had no, after baseball, that's all they could do. There was a whole lot of fellas like that. And I made up my mind then, if I ever had a chance, I would help the players get a pension, something they could live on after their playing days were over. And we were able to do that while I was there.
That's good. I've covered my questions. Do you have any general comments you'd like to make just about the topic we're covering? Anything we haven't taken care of?
Well, I don't think of anything else at the moment that I could add. If you're through.
You're a super good interview. Sure appreciate it.
All right.